Decent for We the People news. Now, I did want to bring this up. Okay, first of all, this is not for commercial or, geez, I forgot what the other word is, commerce use. I never look straight forward. I always look around me. Be able to protect myself by any means necessary. I'm not an attorney, so this is no way, shape, or form supposed to be any type of legal advice. If you take it as such, it was just an opinion. Always seek an attorney. Alright? A couple of videos I talked about how Lincoln screwed us. Now, I want you guys to know, Lincoln used to be one of my favorite presidents before I did all this research. And, apparently it was Trump's favorite president also. But he did used to be one of my favorites. So, knowing how bad he screwed us really does break my heart in two. Okay, it's not broken as bad nowadays. This was a couple of years ago. So, I've pretty much gotten over that. But, it I can't say it destroyed me, all right? It just irked me, I guess, really good. That if I could find Lincoln myself, I would probably slap the p-dolly out of him, okay? For being so ignorant. And so this is not of any type of discrimination against Lincoln whatsoever, because he was my favorite. Past tense, was. Alright? So, again, I always look around me. And since I've done some research on this stuff, and this lady's apparently done a lot of research, and I agree with just about everything she says. Well, it does irk me that Lincoln did this to us. And the whole war was really didn't need to happen. Here we go.
But no laws or institutions established by law are permitted to survive which are in conflict with those of the conqueror. The suppression of the present rebellion is not the conquest of a foreign country. The citizens of the United States residing in the districts in rebellion are not alien enemies, though they are public enemies. We are public enemies. And it is important in several points of view to observe the distinction between enemies who are subjects of a foreign government and are therefore called alien enemies, and those who are denizens and subjects of the United States and being engaged in civil war are called public enemies. An alien owes no allegiance or obedience to our government or to our Constitution, laws, or proclamations. A citizen subject is bound to obey them all, and when you're talking there, they mean the military. In refusing such obedience, he is guilty of crime against his country and finds in the law of nations no justification for disobedience. That document that I just read you is from William Whiting. I have William Whiting broken down into chapters that anybody's willing to email me and get. And it's the only way you can read William Whiting. The book is that thick in small print, and it's really, really laborious reading. What's the name of the book? War Powers Under the Constitution of the United States by William Whiting. It's available from the Smithsonian. You can get it in ebook. I have it on my iPad. But the best way to read it is broken down chapter by chapter, which a friend sent me a while ago, thank God. I wanted to point, let me see if that's in the Constitution. He said it's punishable by the law of nations, okay? The law of nations. Does anybody know what the law of nations is?
That's international.
That's international law, and it has to be upheld by everybody. And at Article 1, Section 8 in the Constitution, it says the Congress shall have power to define and punish piracies and felonies committed on the high seas and offenses against the law of nations. So when these dudes commit an offense against the law of nations, they can be punished. It's a crime internationally, and I'm going to show you how you can do that. Yes, sir.
Does he? Isn't it against international law to occupy a country? To continue to occupy it? There's a certain amount of time when they must release it?
No.
No?
No. No. They can stay with military power as long as they want to. It's called a dictatorship. How many dictatorships get overthrown on a regular basis or called timeout? Anybody who here's the way the law of nations works. If you have two factions in one country, and one faction doesn't like the other faction, they can wage war against the one they don't like, and the victor gets the spoils. Normally, there's a peace treaty after such a battle, and then they're like. We fought a war. We didn't like what George was doing to us, and we fought a revolutionary war, not on his property, but on ours. And we were fighting for our land. And when it was over, and George conceded that he had lost, and there was a surrender, there was a peace treaty after that. And in that peace treaty, George gave us back everything. He gave us all the land, not only in the colonies, but he had claimed the land to the Mississippi River. And he gave us back that land to the Mississippi River. And that land, those lands, that territory was not under a compact like the Articles of Confederation or the colonies. They were separate states, and George gave them back their land, but he also gave the land to the Mississippi, which was a territory. And so the United States had to write the book of the Northwest Ordinance to put it in the rules and regulations concerning the territories. And in that book, it says, if 60,000 people get together in the same area and want to carve a state out of that territory, they have to petition Congress for the state, they have to create a constitution, and they have to set metes and boundaries on the land that they want, submit it to Congress, and then Congress can grant them statehood. And Article 4 of the Constitution deals with disposing of that land. It's called dispose. If anybody's ever listened to Clive Bundy, I didn't know this till I heard Clive, and I'm a constitutional scholar. Who figured? So in Article 4 of the Constitution, it deals with the rules and regulations under the Northwest Ordinance. It's out of the territories. Clive Bundy makes the statement that he doesn't pay the federal government because he's not on federal land. He lives in Clark County, Nevada. And it used to be, before it was Nevada and before it was Clark County, Nevada, it was the territory of Arizona. And I can't remember the year it was done. I think it was 1864, something like that. The United States disposed of the state, the land that is now Nevada. And when they dispose of it, they have nothing more to do with it. The government can own no land except for that which is ceded to them. Before this country, after we beat back George, the government bought all the ports along the eastern seaboard. They bought them, and then they were ceded to them by the process that the government can buy land. The government can buy land for forts and arsenals and other places. They needed to own the ports because that was going to be the revenue for the United States. They owned the ports. The ships sailed into the ports. They wanted to do business in the United States. There was an IRS officer, the real function of one, who went aboard, assessed the goods that were to be imported into the United States, assessed an amount against them for duties and imposts, exposts, and duty taxes, and the ship owner paid the IRS revenue agent, then they could be brought into the country. That's how the government was to be supported. So the government bought and was ceded every port along the eastern seaboard so they could have the revenue to run the United States. That's how small it was supposed to be, and that's how it was to be paid for. Americans were never to pay for this government. But the law of nations is important because all countries are bound by that, and it is. Has anybody ever read Vattel's? That's the only one I read is Vattel's Law of Nations. It's kind of dog eat dog until you set the rules. But I went there. Northwest Ordinance is an example of the rules and regulations that have to. Everybody has to have rules and regulations. We have to know where we stand. And the Northwest Ordinance is the rules. Are the rules of the Northwest Ordinance is the compilation of the rules and regulations pertaining to territories. Now they treat us like territories. We're not. We are a conquered land. We looked to the Lieber Code for our occupation. We looked at the Lieber Code, Lincoln's General Order 100, Order William Whiting, the Solicitor General of the United States under Lincoln. And anybody is welcome to email me, and I'll send you those files. They are really gut-wrenching. They hurt my heart. They're hard to read. It's a horrible thing. But that's the law, according to the military. Or to the Reconstruction Acts. Because the Reconstruction Acts were passed in 1867 and have never been lifted. We are living in an occupied country as in military occupation. The taxes we pay are not ad valorem taxes, as they would have you believe, but occupation taxes. Notice what it says in the Texas Constitution. But before I bring this slide up, I have to tell you that I listened to this dude called, I can't remember what he's called, but he sure as hell knows the law. He's out of Canada. And I always get a different take on the law and how it goes when I listen to him. And he explained why the municipalities retain the major deed when property goes into the county to have a plat come out, and the plat comes out in lots and blocks. It went in as meets and bounds. It comes out in lots and blocks. In Canada, there's the law of titles, title of the land or whatever. Says that the municipality retains the main deed and they give a subsidiary deed to you, a conditional deed, and that conditional deed has the conditions like you have to pay the taxes that they owe. So they pass that on to you. That's how it is in Canada. So I had this theory in my mind, and I had a RICO case for property in Bastrop, so I decided to go over to Bastrop County and look for myself to see if I couldn't make that fit into my scheme of things. Typical thing of taking a round block and trying to shove it into a square hole, but I was trying to see if that's what happened here in Texas because I've never been able to figure out the property taxes. So I go over to there, and the clerk is really helpful, and I'm looking at everything, and I get the plat of the property that I'm dealing with. And interestingly enough, I think if we don't have meets and bounds, you can go to the city and get your plat, and it's got GPS coordinates all around your property. I think you can use those as a description instead of the lots and blocks, which is the land that belongs to them. So I couldn't make it fit. I was just getting, I looked and looked and looked. I looked at deeds, I looked at succession, I looked at all that stuff. I couldn't make it fit. So I went over to the assessor's office and I asked to go in the back room and look at the tax books. I went back there and they said, well, we don't have them all because we had a courthouse fire in 1850. So I said, I went after that. So I went in there and this room is filled with the tax books. And I said, could I have your earliest property tax book? And she pulls off the shelf, 1876 is the first year that they collected property tax in Bastrop County. And now I know that that's the year that they passed the ad valorem tax bill that said ad valorem taxes can only be taxed to banks, bankers, and corporations. I know that the people do not pay ad valorem taxes. So I knew that. I just find it really strange. In the Constitution that we use, by the way, this is allegedly the Texas Constitution. A Constitution can never be revised. It has to be externally amended. And what is this? We have the state of Texas seal up here, and it says it's the Texas Constitution. But I think the state of Texas seal kind of overrides the fact that it's a Texas Constitution. can't be both. It's one or the other. These are the bylaws of the state of Texas. If you want to use a Texas Constitution, you have to go back to 1845 and say 1845 Constitution as amended, and use the concessions in there. So anyway, I know that's the year. First, they sat in Austin, and in the spring, they made this 1876 Constitution. Then they took a break, and they came back, and the first bill that they passed was this ad valorem tax bill, where only banks, bankers, and corporations have to pay. Men and women don't. So I get out this 1876 tax book, and it's about yay big, and so you open it up, and it name over here, and it goes across, and you got columns, and over here is the tax they paid, the property tax. So I'm looking at it, and over here, we have blanks in here, nothing across the line. So I look at it, and I look over here, and that's a corporation. And I'm thinking, what the hell is going on here? These are men and women. Corporations pay nothing. What is it? I just really was perplexed. So I went home to my son, and I said, he is the expert on war powers, and I said to him, let me tell you what I just saw. I can't resolve this. And he said, well, Mother, you weren't looking at property taxes, you were looking at the occupation taxes. And I said, occupation taxes? He said, yes. Occupation taxes, that's what you were paying. That's what those people were paying. And corporations didn't have to pay the occupation taxes, only the citizens. So I thought, well, how can I justify that with the Texas Constitution? So I look at the taxes and revenue section of the Constitution again, and gee, what does it say? It says it's Article 8, Taxation and Revenue. We skip to here, the legislature may provide for the taxation of intangible property and may also impose what? Occupation taxes, both upon natural persons and upon corporations other than municipal doing business in this state. I never saw that. In all the 15 years I've been fiddling with property taxes, I never saw that. Everything in the United States Army Manual, the Labor Code, the Reconstruction Acts give us the rules of occupation, and every one of these documents tells us the occupation ceases when we have peace. Will the powers that be ever broker a peace deal with the American people? Only if they are forced to do so. Who has the power to force Congress to recognize a state of peace? We the people, and we never have. We never have. Who helped do this to us? As you saw from William Whiting's writings, the courts are not courts of peace. They are operated under war powers. Still, they appear to be the people's courts until they appeared to be the people's courts until the advent of the bar. In Texas, the legislature passed the Texas Bar Act in 1939. From that point to this, the people have been systematically squeezed from the courts in civil cases and charged with untold charges in so-called criminal cases. The attorneys are believed to be licensed to practice law in this state. Is there a law license?
No.
No. Is in the occupation code? No. There is no license. They get a certificate. It says this certificate allows you to apply for a license. There is no licensing board. There's no way to get a license, but they call it license, okay? The attorneys are believed to be licensed to practice law in this state. In this case, in this state is not Texas. So where are they practicing their law?
District of Columbia.
Everything says in this state. That ain't us, boys. We're in Texas. People exercising their rights require no license of any kind. Not driving, not law, not anything. The judges are merely attorneys in black robes. The attorneys are masters of attornment. What does that word mean? And seldom care about their clients. We could not be in this mess if it hadn't been for attorneys. They have ruined our judicial system and sacrificed the people on their altar bar. chapter bar alter. Early in the 1800s, the government must have known the dangers attorneys posed for this country, because the 13th Amendment was proposed by the 11th U.S. Congress on May 1st, 1810. When I first found that 13th Amendment, I got a copy of it from the laws of Virginia. This isn't it, I can't find it. And we brought it into Texas. We had it certified by the archives down somewhere around Texas, and it is in their archives. So the 13th Amendment, as it was written, is in Texas. That's what you do to bring something that they don't have on their shelves in. We did the proper thing and we brought it in. Article 13. If any citizen of the United States shall accept, claim, receive, or retain any title of nobility or honor, or shall, without the consent of Congress, and Congress isn't capitalized. Wow. Consent of Congress. In that case, it would be a Congress of people. Never noticed that. Accept and retain any present pension, office, or emolument of any kind whatever from any emperor, king, prince, or foreign power, such person shall cease to be a citizen of the United States. That's when it wasn't a deadly thing. And shall be incapable of holding any office of trust or profit under them or either of them. Now, what this has been interpreted to mean is no attorney can hold a public office. Okay? What happened to the 13th Amendment?
Probably got burned. They broke it up and moved it into other places in the Constitution. Switched it out.
No.
They claimed it wasn't ratified by enough states.
That's what they claimed. However, okay, what a different world we would have now if that amendment had remained published. What happened was the amendment had, I went too far. Records incorrectly show the amendment was never ratified, but in fact it was, and somebody found it in the Library of Congress. Ratification took far longer to accomplish in the days before internet, and it was until about 1817 that the 13th Amendment was ratified. In 1820, all existing laws of the United States were reprinted to reflect the addition of the 13th Amendment. The amendment has been interpreted to mean that no esquire, the title given attorneys, can hold public office. And now, what a different world would have if there remained. But you see, this is done by the 13th colony. Again, it took about 1817, I have the figure somewhere, to be ratified. But look at this book. It still has it in this book. And it's the laws of...
We're going to stop it right there. This is Diesel We the People News. Till next time. Bye, y'all.